G'day ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Draw with Jazza. I'm Jazza and this is a video tutorial on using Adobe Photoshop to paint. Now when I say paint, I've done tutorials in the past on colouring in Photoshop and using various techniques like clipping masks and gradients and things like that. But when I talk about painting in Photoshop, I mean the idea of replicating the feeling and the style of painting on something like a canvas with actual paints. Now, there are different things that we can use to help us do this, and it's difficult because everyone kind of has different styles and there is no right or wrong way to do it. I'm going to be using a method that I learned from Danidem, who's a fantastic artist. He was the winner of the Polycount competition on the Steam workshop for Dota 2. Now the first thing I want to talk about is brushes. Now to bring up your brushes, you press B, that sets it to the brush setting, okay? Now I'm using a digital tablet and that allows me to have line weight variation, so I can have thick and thin parts of the line. That's quite important. Now to get to the brush settings, we right click and we see this little window pop up. Okay, now we can bring that up by going up here in the top left, but it's much easier to kind of bring it up as you're working because you might want to swap brushes, and we can do things like change the size and we can do things like change the hardness. Okay, so if I want a really soft airbrush sort of feel, I tend to go 0% hardness, go a large size, and I'll bring down the opacity, which is this option up here, and bring it down to something like 6-7%. And that enables me to kind of slowly layer things and get a really soft gradiented feel. And that gives that airbrushed quality, okay? So that's one way of doing it. But that doesn't necessarily give us the that painted feel. It gives us a bit more of a digital feel. So I'm going to find a paintbrush that works well for what I want to do. So I'm going to go through here and you can see lots of presets. Some of these are a bit fancy. So if I hit this one, you can see that this image pops up in the top left that shows the angle of my pen. Okay, so I can, oh, I should probably go a smaller size. I can go through and we can see I get that soft stroke. Now to make it look really a lot like a brush stroke, I can hit this button here and you can see that this has always pressure for opacity. So when I select this, it means if I'm pressing lightly, it's almost invisible, and then as I press harder, it gets harder. Now that's really cool. Keep that in mind and use that if you want to, but this tends to get a much more painterly sort of style when we use that setting. Okay, so we can go through and find a brush that we want to use. Now I want to use one, I don't care about having the tilt used or anything. I think that overcomplicates things. Now there are lots of different ones to use, but my favorite is this one. It's number 17. There we go. Okay, cool. So I really like this. We've got the soft and we've got the hard, and there's also this other one here which is the always use pressure for size. So I can turn this off, and then going soft to hard will only affect the opacity. With it on, soft to hard affects both opacity and brush size, and then with the opacity off, soft to hard only affects the brush size. So they're things to kind of get used to using in the way that you need them. But for now, I'm going to use both. Now I'm going to paint an eye. Before I get straight into it, I want to show you where to bring up some more brush settings when you need to. You go up here to Window, and you go down to Brush. You can hit F5, which is the shortcut. Now I have mine docked here on the left to have it accessible. And in here you can change much more intricate details of the brush that you have selected. So you can change shape dynamic, scattering, texture, transfer, noise, all of this stuff to really affect the details of the brush. Now I'm not going to mess with that. I'm going to keep it simple for now. And we're going to get to the painting dynamic. How do we get a flow? How do we have things move at a decent pace and get used to using things? So first I'm going to find a skin color. Now to find a skin color, I go somewhere between yellow and red into here in the orange, and I go a bit lighter around here. Find this neutral tone, and I'm just going to paint bucket. There we go. So the next thing I'm going to do is on a layer above, I'm going to sketch. So I'm going to select my brush. I'll bring it down to a much smaller size. And I'm going to bring down the opacity of the layer, and I'm just going to sketch an eye. So it's not going to be anything too fancy, just want to get the basic shape in. So we have the eyebrow, and the oval shape of the eye itself. Now, to manipulate or control something without selecting it, you can just hit Control T and we get the immediate transform box. So we can rotate and transform without using the marquee or anything like that. I'm just using this to get the basic shapes in before I get into the shading. So the basic shape of the eyes, the eyeball. Now how do I want the reflectors? Let's have something of a window shape, pupil. I think that's a decent sort of shape. I want it to look semi-realistic, so the shade was going to follow around the side there. Okay, so I've got the basic shape of the eye in. Fairly happy with that. I might just lasso select this and move it over here. And Control T, move it all, oops, not that. Select Control T, move it up. Okay, so there we go. I've got the basic thing I want to paint. I'm just going to lower the opacity even more and we're going to get to painting it. So back on the layer beneath, I'm just going to be really rough and get the basic shades in. So first things first, if you hold Alt and click, you notice this little picker comes up, okay? So you can also hold the mouse button down or your pen down and you can see what it's selecting, and then when you release it has selected that. So I'm just going to select my basic skin color by Alt clicking, and then I'm going to create some swatches. So I'm going to have a highlight, go a bit higher in the yellow, and on a new layer, I'm just going to paint some of these in. So I'll up my brush size, paint that over here, add another highlight here. What else can I do? Okay, so Alt click. So I have my base and I'll bring it down into something more of a brown. And then again, I'll go into slightly more red, desaturated, dark, like that. Okay, so these are some of the swatches I'm going to work with. I'm also going to, I'll Alt click here and get another tone which is slightly more red. Okay, so these are some swatches. This is my little color palette in the corner. Now I can remove this later, but the reason I want this here is it allows me to, with the brush selected, I can just Alt click and then go in and paint that color without needing to go to the color picker. So that's why sometimes you see in people's Photoshop paintings, if it shows like a progress thing, they have a whole bunch of color blobs, they can kind of just pick them. So with back on my normal layer, I'm going to up my brush size and I'm going to get the really basic colors in. So I'm going to get in some basic shades. I want the eye to represent what the actual shades of the eye would be like. I'm going to up the brush size. Okay, so I think if I go something like this, start getting the basics in, nothing too crazy, and I'm going to find a dark for the eyebrow, bring the brush size down, okay, so you can see we're starting to build up color. Now I want a white, actually I should create this as a swatch and put it over here. And then I should create it. Now I'm not going to use straight white, I'm going to use a very light cream color. Reason being is using a flat white or a flat black can be quite disruptive to the image being, you know, believable. It tends to make things look artificial because there is no pure white or pure black in natural looking things generally. That makes it look much more artificial. So painting in a very light cream color. Okay, now I'm going to get a slightly darker cream. Actually, no. First, I'll Alt click and on my palette layer, add that. And then I'm going to add a slightly darker cream like this, and add that to my palette. And then back on my painting layer, I'm going to start shading in the eye. So usually up the top here is where I add some eye shadow, not actual eye shadow, but the eyeball shadow. And you don't want makeup that's eyeball shadow because it will sting your eyes. I'm sorry for saying stupid things. Okay, that's some basic eyeball shadow. It's probably a bit too low, so I'm just going to alt click and push it up a bit, and alt click and blend. Okay, lovely. Next, I'm going to select a very dark blue, desaturated blue. Just going to go in here like this. Fill this in. Now, this is all very rough, and it's allowed to be, because we're at this is like construction lines of our picture, but it's painting. Does that make sense? So we're kind of roughing it out as we go. So I'm going to select a near black, but it'll be a dark brown for the pupil. And then I'm going to add some shadow under here for the eye itself. Again, it's very rough, doesn't need to be perfect. I'm going to pick this and select a nice lighter blue, and I'm just going to start roughing in the details of the eye. And then with a bit more stronger colour there. Again, darker blue, stronger colour, smaller brush. Going to go in towards the edges and start pushing out little streaks that we have in our eyes. Now this isn't going to be perfect, this is just kind of an example as to how you can use these tools to fairly rapidly create and build up your painting. This is very different to the other styles that we've used here on Draw with Jazza. We've done a lot of clipping masks, done a lot of gradients, done a lot of kind of much more digital looking styles, and this is kind of how we can use a more painterly feeling. Okay, so what I've done here is I've painted a really light by barely touching it, and then I can alt click and then I have a lighter color selected. So when I paint with that, it's going to be even lighter, especially if I press lightly. So that's how we can blend our colors, right? So alt click to select a darker tone, bring it darker in the edges there. If I want to manually create an even darker tone, I can just go in here and make my brush size smaller, go up to the edges. I'm going to select a different color. I'm going to go into my oranges and create that little bit that we have. Don't know what it's called. Someone in the comments feel free to correct me and let me know what it is. And then alt click our dark colors, and I'm going to really bring out the shadows now. So I'm going to make my brush size smaller. And really outline where the dark lines of the folds of the skin are. Okay, now to blend. So next I'm going to hide my lines. Okay, so now with the lines gone, you can see that it's rough, but it's coming along. Now I'm going to show you how to blend larger areas and the bits that look rough, like up here. So I'm going to select my brush, make it a bit larger, and holding Alt, I'm going to click the colors between each other, and then I'm going to continually do that. Okay, so let's say this bit, for example. If I want to blend this light with this dark, I'm going to Alt click a color between them, have a large brush size, lightly paint. See that? So if I paint over the dark, it makes it lighter. If I paint over the light, it makes it darker. Then we have a mid-tone. So if I want to bring forward the dark tone, I just Alt-click the dark and push it forward, and then lightly paint. If I want to bring forward the mid-tone, Alt-click, bring it out, up my brush size, Alt-click. You can see that, Alt-click, Alt-click, push in the light. And you can see how quickly I've blended those colors in. Okay, now I'm a novice of this painting style. I am not by any means any sort of expert, but I'm learning. And in the process of learning, I'm also letting you know that I'm learning and kind of showing you my process so that you can kind of join me as well. Now, some of you will be familiar with this and will be better than me at it, and that's fine. I'm sorry I'm no expert, but in the end, I believe that this YouTube channel really is about sharing the process, sharing each other's progress, and it being a kind of collaborative community. So slightly dark, slightly bring that out. And as you can see, I'm kind of getting the merging going on. Okay, now eventually I'm going to merge them even more by kind of smudging them into each other a bit. Yeah? But for now, I'm just using these light strokes to blend roughly the image. Okay, so I'm going to go through and now I'm going to continue to paint the image. I'm going to speed up the process so you can watch what I do as I do it, and I'm not going to really change anything. I'm just going to use the same brush. Occasionally I'll change the brush size, I'll select different colors, and I'll eventually zoom in to add details. But I'm going to get the rough feeling done first, and then when I'm happy with that, I'm going to go in and do the details, and it's all going to be the same. So I'm going to Alt click and then brush to blend like this, or I'm going to select a color in here, then use the brush to paint. So I'll speed up the process so you can see what I'm doing as I do it. What I'm doing now, ladies and gentlemen, is I'm adding a bit of smudge to these areas just to add the final blending. Now, the best way to do this isn't to press, hold, smudge a whole area, then let go. Because as you can see, it takes a while to finish doing it. It takes a bit of catching up. So what I do is I kind of tap back and forth like this. And this lets the computer render it all in much smaller parts and lets you see kind of how it's going as you do it. So in areas that you want to blend, just kind of go back and forth like this, and then when it's kind of on the edges like that, back and forth, blend, and then sometimes up and down just to, what's the word, kind of merge and blend the ones where you can see strokes from where you've done the smudging. So that's how I tend to blend the strokes of areas like that. So I've added details to most of the image, and I mean, I'm not going to do anything amazing today, just kind of demonstrate how I'm going to kind of use this style. Now I will go through and add in some refining details. I want to add hair to the eyebrow, fill in some of the shadows and lines of some areas, but otherwise this is the basic feel of what I'm going for, and you can see that it's a fairly effective method of painting. So were I to do this on a full canvas with, like, you know, a full image, and especially after having a bit of practice with the style, you can see how you could easily get some very nice looking sort of painterly styled image, you know, much more traditional looking than digital. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is how I can kind of blend using the smudge. I'm going to go through and continue doing that, and I'll have it back on fast forward, and you'll see me go through and add some of the details as well after I do some of this blending. So now I've done some basic painting. It's nothing too amazing, but I want to just alter some things that I'm not totally happy with. The shape is a bit wonky for me, so I'm going to go up here to filter, and I'm going to go liquefy. And this brings up a window where I can see the whole painting, and I can select some different liquefy tools, such as this one, which is a bit of a move. I can kind of nudge things around. So I'm going to select the brush size that I want, and I want to just kind of nudge this up and nudge this down and get the eye shape I want, because it's slightly off. Kind of pull it open that way a bit, pull that up, and that's a bit closer to what I want. Up a bit more. Alright, so this is a bit cheating. This is kind of for someone like me who isn't very good at the jump in and paint like this sort of style, but hey, practice makes perfect. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with those alterations. If I hit OK, you can see the difference between those, and I'm fairly happy with that. Now if I hide my palette layer, and I'm just going to select this and transform my selection because I don't need the edges. I want my painting to be about that size, and I'll go image crop. Might alter that again. Transform selection, bring it smaller. Alright, image crop. And I have a look at a distance, see what that feels like. I'm fairly happy with it. It's not perfect. Again, this is a style that I'm not very used to, and it's something I will practice in, so I might do some future tutorials on it, or maybe a speed paint in my practice session. But the point of this tutorial isn't necessarily to show the best example of it, but just to show you the tools and what can be done with it. So just to recap, B is the shortcut for brush. We can open our brush settings, I believe by hitting F5, there we go. So F5 brings up the detailed brush settings. Right click with B selected brings up all these tools, and with our pressure sensitivity we can use opacity, and we can use brush stroke size alterations. And then using Alt to select areas of the canvas, and we might want to create a palette like this. Oh, where are you? Like, hang on, like this. Oh no, I've cropped it out. Oh, the palette's gone. We can create a palette to paint the basics of the eyes, and then we can blend it by alt-clicking the colors between them that we lightly paint and create that process. We can use smudge to bring it all together, go zoom in, add details, all that stuff, and then we can also use our filter, filter liquefy, to alter the shapes of the final image. So I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial and learned something, and I look forward to doing something in the future where I kind of refine this method, because I'm not very good at it so far. But until next time, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me, and I will see you later.
Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you enjoy my videos. You can download the reference files from this tutorial by clicking the link in the description. And remember to share any art, animation or game you make on Newgrounds.com. Until next time, see you later.